On a Saturday morning in early summer, sunlight spilled gently across the pristine white walls of a colonial mansion in Chestnut Hill, one of Boston's most prestigious suburbs. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant hum of lawnmowers and the occasional bark of a dog. Inside, Elizabeth Collins stood at her bedroom window, gazing at the garden below. Rows of roses bloomed in immaculate perfection, their white petals glowing in the sunlight. These roses were her mother's pride. For an entire year, Margaret had tended to them with the devotion of a craftsman, nurturing them with careful pruning, fertilizer, and whispered encouragement. They were to be cut and bound into the bouquet Elizabeth would carry down the aisle next week. Elizabeth touched the glass, her reflection faintly visible, superimposed against the image of the roses. A wave of emotion swept over her, nervous excitement, gratitude, and a strange flicker of unease she couldn't quite place. "Are you ready?" Amanda's voice drifted up the staircase. Elizabeth blinked, pulled from her thoughts. It was only a week before the wedding, and today was the final makeup rehearsal, the last detail to be perfected before the grand day. "Yes, I'll be right down," she called back, smoothing her dress before turning once more to the mirror. Her reflection told a story she still found hard to believe. She had risen from modest beginnings, her father, James, a dedicated high school teacher, and her mother, a homemaker who had poured every ounce of energy into raising her daughters. Elizabeth had carved her own path, working tirelessly until she became sales director at Prestige Realty, commanding a respectable salary of $85,000 a year. Every cent she had earned was hers, a testament to ambition and grit. She thought of Robert Wilson. They had met 3 years ago at a real estate seminar in Boston. He had approached her during the networking session, his navy suit crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile disarmingly confident. A vice president in Goldman Sachs' investment banking division, he had confessed later that he was immediately captivated by her intelligence and grace. Within a year, he proposed under the glittering lights of a riverside restaurant on the Charles River. She had said yes, her heart convinced she had found the partner who would complete her. It had felt like the perfect story. Downstairs, her sister Amanda sat curled on the sofa, fidgeting with the hem of her skirt. Amanda had always been fragile, relying on Elizabeth's strength since childhood. Where Elizabeth had charged forward with determination, Amanda lingered in hesitancy. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, often exhausted, and though she was to be Elizabeth's maid of honor, today her face looked unusually pale. "I'm not feeling very well today," Amanda muttered as Elizabeth entered. Elizabeth frowned. "Have you skipped breakfast again? You haven't been looking well lately." Amanda's eyes flickered downward. "No, that's not it." Elizabeth sensed the evasiveness in her sister's tone, but instead of pressing, she smiled gently. Their bond had been her pride, her anchor through all of life's trials. "Don't worry, after the makeup rehearsal, we'll stop by the cafe for brunch. That should help." Just then, the doorbell chimed. The sound echoed through the mansion's high-ceilinged halls. It was Robert, standing at the door, immaculately dressed as always. His smile was as polished as the cufflinks on his sleeves. His presence carried an air of power, the kind that drew people in. He earned over $150,000 a year, and people in Boston's elite circles knew his name. "Good morning, my love." He leaned in and kissed Elizabeth's cheek. "Hey, you'll ruin my makeup." She laughed lightly, swatting him on the arm. Robert chuckled, though his laugh carried a faint stiffness, as though something weighed on him, but no one seemed to notice. "Mind if I join the makeup rehearsal today?" he asked casually. "I've got some things to discuss with the venue as well." "Of course," Elizabeth replied. In the backyard, Margaret's hands were buried in soil, tending to the roses, while James sat in his study reading the newspaper. Occasionally, he looked out at his wife with a smile of quiet admiration. Their marriage, enduring 35 years, was Elizabeth's ideal, love seasoned by loyalty, weathered yet strong. Everything was falling into place. A ceremony at Trinity Church in Copley Square, followed by a lavish reception at the Four Seasons Hotel. 150 guests would gather, colleagues, clients, friends, relatives, lobster salad, prime rib roast, a towering 5-tier cake. Every detail had been chosen with care. Elizabeth would wear her mother's pearl necklace and her grandmother's tiara. completing the tradition of something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. It was the wedding she had dreamed of since girlhood. Or so she thought. A woman's shrill cry cut through the elegant hum of conversation, startling every guest in the reception hall. Heads turned as the tall glass doors swung open violently. She rushed past reception, past security, past the bewildered ushers who tried to stop her. The grand ballroom, moments before buzzing with champagne toasts and laughter, suddenly fell into a silence so sharp it was almost painful. The woman's appearance was striking. She wore a tailored Hermes dress, her heels clicking defiantly against the marble floor as she walked with trembling determination toward the center of the room. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above her, throwing fragments of light across her tear-streaked face. Gasps rippled through the crowd as someone whispered, "Isn't that Robert's secretary?" Indeed, she was. Janet Wilson, Robert's new assistant at Goldman Sachs, a familiar figure to many in the financial district. But tonight, she was no polished professional. Tonight, she was fury and heartbreak personified. "Robert," her voice cracked, echoing through the hall. "You deceived me." Elizabeth's champagne glass froze midair. Amanda's hands clutched her bouquet of roses until petals fell to the floor. And Robert, his confident smile, the very one that had charmed clients, investors, and women alike, collapsed into panic. "Janet, why are you here?" he demanded, his tone faltering, his face paling. Janet stood tall, though her voice trembled. "I'm pregnant too. Pregnant with Robert's child." The room erupted. Guests gasped. Chairs scraped against the floor. Voices overlapped in disbelief. For a moment, the grand reception hall, filled with Boston's finest, overlooking the Charles River, felt more like a courtroom than a wedding. Amanda's cry pierced the chaos. She stood abruptly, her pale pink bridesmaid dress swaying as tears spilled down her cheeks. "What? You told me I was special." Janet's laugh was bitter, cruel, dripping with scorn. "Special? Don't be naive. He said the same to me. For 3 years, Amanda. 3 years, while you played the doting little sister." Gasps grew louder. Some women covered their mouths in horror. Some men shook their heads in disgust. Janet reached into her luxury handbag and pulled out a folded sheet. With a flourish, she held it high. "Here's the proof. My ultrasound from last week." Under the chandeliers, the black and white image of a forming child seemed almost surreal. The murmurs died into silence. There he stood, Robert Wilson, vice president of Goldman Sachs, earning over $150,000 a year, once celebrated for his ambition, admired for his charm, now exposed for what he truly was, a man who had betrayed 3 women at once, his secretary, his fiancée, and his fiancée's sister. The room was chaos. Amanda collapsed in sobs, her bouquet tumbling onto the floor. Janet glared, victorious yet broken, and Robert, once polished and composed, stood trembling, the sweat on his forehead betraying his fear. But amid the storm, Elizabeth remained calm, sitting elegantly. She lifted her champagne flute to her lips, her eyes glinting like steel. To her closest college friend seated beside her, she whispered with a cold smile, "Just like Shakespeare, a tragedy unfolding on stage." From the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston's glittering skyline stretched beyond the Charles River, serene and steady, mocking the turmoil inside. Robert opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Elizabeth stood, slowly, deliberately. The motion alone silenced the room. The rustle of her gown, the gleam of Swarovski crystals on her train. She looked less like a betrayed bride and more like a queen about to deliver a verdict. Her smile was gone. In its place was resolve, sharp, unyielding. "Thank you," she began, her voice strong and steady, carrying to every corner of the hall. "Thank you for the wonderful show. But let me assure you, it's not over yet. This was only the prologue." Gasps rippled again, softer this time, hushed by curiosity. All 150 guests leaned forward. Elizabeth walked to the center, her gown gliding across the polished floor. The chandeliers above her seemed to burn brighter. She turned first to Amanda, her sister trembling in shame. "Amanda, did you really think I knew nothing? That I wouldn't notice the lies, the evasions, the secrecy?" Her eyes shifted to Robert. His color drained, his jaw stiffened, as if frozen. Last Thursday, Elizabeth continued. You came home unusually early. You claimed your meeting ended ahead of schedule, but you left your phone on the counter. Whispers began to spread like wildfire. The low battery notification lit up the screen, and then I saw the message, from my beloved sister. Gasps. Faces turned toward Amanda. Elizabeth reached into her clutch. With steady hands, she pulled out a photo of the phone screen, enlarged and clear. She held it high for all to see. Let's tell her about the baby at the wedding. Then big sister will have to give up. Amanda nearly collapsed into her chair, her face as white as her bouquet roses. Elizabeth's gaze hardened. I knew everything, but I chose silence, for one reason only. She turned fully to Robert now, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. To expose you for what you are. A man who hides behind a polished suit and a fat paycheck. A man who impregnated his fiancée's sister and his secretary, all while preparing to wed. Robert's lips quivered. Elizabeth, we can talk about this. Talk? She laughed, cold and sharp. No, Robert, let's show them. From her clutch, she drew another set of papers, thick invoices bound neatly together. The Four Seasons Hotel's emblem gleamed under the light. The cost of this wedding, $75,000. Venue, catering, flowers, my dress, the tiara, all of it, paid on your card. 3 days ago, I changed the billing arrangement. Gasps turned to astonished murmurs. Some guests clapped hands to their mouths in shock. Elizabeth's voice grew stronger, steadier. My plan was simple. Reveal the truth, shatter your credibility, and ensure that the price of your betrayal isn't just emotional, but financial and social. Robert staggered. Elizabeth. Save it. She cut him off with the precision of a surgeon. You'll need your words for the Goldman Sachs board when they ask why their vice president humiliated the firm in front of half of Boston's elite. Her words landed like blows. Around the room, Prestige Realty clients and Goldman Sachs executives exchanged glances, already recalculating alliances. Elizabeth set her champagne glass on the table. The crystal clink echoed like a gavel strike. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice both mocking and commanding, thank you for being my witnesses tonight. Consider this my real wedding gift, to myself. And then, with deliberate grace, she slid the platinum wedding ring from her finger. It rolled across the table, striking silence into the hall. Robert reached out desperately. Elizabeth, without you, my future. Elizabeth turned, her eyes merciless. Your future is debt, scandal, and child support for 2 women. That's the future you earned. She looked once at Amanda. As for you, sister, move out of our parents' house. Stand on your own 2 feet. You lost the right to lean on me the moment you betrayed me. Then she lifted her gown, turned, and walked to the doors. The heavy panels opened as if on cue, revealing a waiting taxi, her escape, her victory. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, like a spark in dry grass, laughter began, nervous at first, then louder, then applause. Applause for the betrayed bride who had turned her humiliation into triumph.